There are family arguments, and then there are the moments that quietly change everything. Because what is happening inside the Plath family right now does not feel like just another uncomfortable conversation. It feels like the kind of emotional fracture that starts in silence, builds behind closed doors, and then suddenly becomes impossible to hide. For a long time, the Plaths looked like a family built on structure, control, and the belief that no matter what happened, the foundation would always hold. But that foundation has already been shaken by Kim and Barry's divorce, and now the emotional fallout is reaching places viewers may not have expected. And this time, the biggest shift may not be the divorce itself. It may be Lydia, because the daughter who spent years trying to hold on to peace, loyalty, and emotional stability now seems to be standing in the middle of a painful truth she can no longer ignore. The closeness she once had with Kim no longer feels the same. The comfort is gone. The ease is gone. And what remains is something far more difficult to face. Distance. Not loud, dramatic, explosive distance. The quiet kind. The kind that grows when love is still there, but trust no longer feels safe. That is what makes this moment inside the Plath family so emotionally powerful. On the surface, there is still laughter. There are still jokes. There are still light moments where everyone tries to act as if life is simply moving forward. But underneath that surface, something deeper is happening. The family is changing faster than some of them are emotionally prepared for, and not everyone is handling that change the same way. For some members of the family, this new chapter almost feels exciting. After years of living under a strict structure, the idea of freedom sounds thrilling. Suddenly, there are jokes about doing whatever they want, going wherever they want, living without the same boundaries that once defined everything. There is laughter, exaggeration, playful teasing, and moments where it almost feels like the family is finally breathing in a way they never could before. But freedom has a strange way of exposing what structure used to hide. Because once the rules disappear, people are forced to reveal who they really are, what they really feel, and what unresolved emotions they have been carrying for years. That is exactly where the Plath family seems to be now. Even Barry, who once felt like the steady face of the family's traditional world, appears to be adjusting to his new reality in a way that is both awkward and revealing. His humor feels lighter. His conversations feel different. He jokes about being single again, about dating, about stepping into a chapter of life that once would have seemed unthinkable. People laugh. The room reacts. It sounds playful. But behind that humor is a man trying to understand who he is after the collapse of the marriage that helped define the entire family. And that is the pattern repeating everywhere right now. Everyone is smiling a little. Everyone is joking a little. But almost everyone also seems to be quietly carrying emotional weight they cannot fully hide. Because when a marriage like Kim and Barry's ends, it does not just affect two people. It changes the emotional gravity of the entire family. Every sibling feels it. Every conversation absorbs it. Every old wound gets reopened by it. And the deeper this family moves into that new reality, the more obvious it becomes that some of their relationships were not nearly as stable as they once appeared. That is where Lydia's situation becomes impossible to ignore. For a long time, Lydia seemed like one of the strongest emotional anchors in the family. She believed in peace. She believed in patience. She believed that even when tension existed, people could hold on to faith, love, and loyalty long enough to work through it. But divorce changes the emotional math of a family. It forces people to ask questions they never wanted to ask. It forces children to look at their parents differently, and in Lydia's case, it seems to have created a painful emotional distance between her and Kim that no one can pretend is minor anymore. That relationship once looked deeply close, stable, familiar, built on years of shared values and emotional connection. Now it feels strained, uncertain, almost fragile, and that is what makes this so difficult to watch. Because when a daughter starts feeling like she cannot fully reach her own mother anymore, the damage is not just relational. It becomes personal. It becomes emotional. It becomes the kind of wound that sits beneath every future conversation. Lydia does not come across as someone who wants chaos. That may be exactly why this hurts so much. She does not seem interested in attacking. She does not seem interested in creating a scene. But there is a difference between avoiding conflict and silently absorbing pain until it changes how you see someone. And right now, it feels like Lydia may be reaching that line. The issue is not just what happened in the divorce, it is what happened after. The silence, the emotional disconnect, the sense that the people who were once closest no longer understand each other in the same way. That kind of shift is devastating inside a family, because love can survive hard seasons. But when communication starts breaking down, even love can begin to feel uncertain. And that seems to be the larger problem spreading through the Plath family right now. Communication. Or, more accurately, the lack of it. There are moments where family members sound lighthearted and playful, but then suddenly someone says something that reveals a much deeper emotional truth. A relationship no longer feels secure. A bond no longer feels clear. Someone no longer knows where they stand with someone they love. And once those kinds of admissions start happening out loud, the atmosphere changes instantly. That is exactly what happens when uncertainty around Isaac begins to surface. At first, it may sound subtle, calm, almost casual. But the emotional meaning behind it is much bigger than the words themselves. When someone in a family admits they are no longer fully sure where they stand with a sibling, that is not just a passing comment. That is a warning sign. It means distance has already begun doing its work. It means assumptions may have replaced honest conversations. It means the emotional closeness people once relied on is no longer guaranteed. And that is one of the hardest truths adulthood brings to families. You can love someone deeply and still slowly lose emotional access to them if the relationship is not being actively protected. Isaac has always seemed like someone drawn toward independence. Curious, motivated, interested in exploring a life beyond the narrow structure that once shaped the family's world. That kind of independence can be admirable, but it can also create confusion for relatives who are still trying to figure out where everyone fits in this new version of the family. So now the Plaths are facing a reality that many families eventually face, but few know how to navigate well. What happens when everyone is moving in different emotional directions at the same time? What happens when some people want closure, some want freedom, some want reassurance, and some want to avoid the discomfort altogether? That is where things start to break down. Because without honest communication, distance gets filled by something far more dangerous: assumptions. And once assumptions take over, gossip is never far behind. That may be why the conversation around rumors hits so hard, especially when it involves Zach. The warning about gossip is not framed like a dramatic outburst. It is controlled, firm, measured, but that almost makes it more serious. Because when someone in a family stops asking nicely and starts drawing hard boundaries, it usually means trust has already been damaged more than people realize. And that is what makes this particular moment feel bigger than a simple disagreement. Someone is finally saying, enough. Enough whispering. Enough speculation. Enough talking behind people's backs while pretending the family is still fine. That kind of line in the sand does not appear unless the emotional tension has been building for a long time. And once it is spoken, the entire energy changes. Suddenly, the jokes feel thinner. The smiles feel shorter. The room feels more honest, but also more dangerous. Because now everyone knows the real issue is no longer being hidden. Trust inside this family is fragile. And fragile trust can shatter fast. That is why the question of apologies becomes so important. Because sooner or later, every family that reaches this kind of emotional breaking point has to decide whether they want to protect their pride or protect the relationship. That choice sounds simple in theory. In reality, it is brutal. Apologies inside families are never just about one sentence. They are about history. They are about power. They are about who felt unheard, who felt dismissed, who carried resentment for years, and who is finally exhausted enough to stop pretending they are fine. So when the question comes up, Are apologies finally going to happen? The hesitation matters. That silence says more than a speech ever could. Because if people were truly ready, the answer would not be so difficult. And that is where Lydia and Kim's emotional distance becomes even more painful. Because what Lydia may be needing right now is not just time. It may be acknowledgement, recognition, a sense that the pain this family has experienced is real and deserves to be named. Meanwhile, Kim appears to be operating from a completely different emotional pace. She seems determined to move forward, to embrace the changes in her life, to focus on independence, reinvention, and the version of herself that exists beyond the marriage and the old family structure. And to be fair, that perspective makes sense too. After years of living inside a very specific role, it is natural that she would want freedom. It is natural that she would want to rediscover parts of herself that may have been buried under obligation, motherhood, and years of maintaining a family image. But emotional truth becomes complicated when two people are healing in opposite directions. Lydia seems to be looking backward, trying to understand what was lost. Kim seems to be looking forward, trying to protect what comes next. Neither instinct is automatically wrong. But the gap between them is where the damage grows. Because one person may be asking, can we talk about what this did to us? While the other may already be thinking, we need to stop living in the past. And if those two emotional timelines never meet, the relationship slowly starts to fracture. That is why this situation feels so important. This is not just about one uncomfortable conversation between a mother and daughter. This is about whether the emotional center of the Plath family can survive the version of change they are living through now. Because once a family starts losing emotional trust at multiple levels, between parents, between siblings, between children and parents, between those speaking directly and those speaking through gossip, the entire system becomes unstable. And instability inside a family does not always look like screaming. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like short answers. Sometimes it looks like a smile that ends too quickly. Sometimes it looks like a daughter who still loves her mother, but no longer feels safe enough to be fully open with her. That may be the saddest part of all. Because the pain here does not come from hatred. It comes from hurt. And hurt inside families can be much harder to fix than anger. Still, despite everything, there are signs that the story is not finished. That matters, because even in the middle of awkward conversations, emotional distance, and boundary setting, there are still flashes of something that suggests the family has not given up on each other completely. There are small gestures, moments of concern, attempts at humor, even suggestions as simple as a hug. That may sound small, but in families carrying this much unresolved emotion, small gestures can mean everything. They do not erase the damage. They do not magically restore trust, but they create openings. And healing almost always begins with an opening. The real question is whether anyone is truly ready to step through it. Because if the Plaths keep doing what families often do in moments like this, laughing around the truth, softening the tension, delaying the hard conversations, hoping time will fix what honesty has not, then the distance will keep growing. And once distance becomes the new normal, even love can start to feel unfamiliar. That is the risk they are facing now. Not just conflict, separation, not necessarily physical, emotional. The kind that turns once close family members into people who still care, but no longer really know how to reach each other. That is why this chapter feels like such a major turning point for Welcome to Plathville. Because for years, the Plath family story was built around rules, structure, and the image of unity. Now the real story may be something much more uncomfortable. What happens when the structure disappears, and the emotional truth underneath it is finally exposed? For Lydia, that truth may be that staying silent is no longer enough. For Kim, that truth may be that moving on does not automatically mean everyone else has healed. For the siblings, that truth may be that distance, gossip, and miscommunication are already doing damage that will not disappear on its own. And for the family as a whole, the truth may be the hardest one of all. If they want to survive this next chapter, they cannot keep pretending that love by itself is enough. Love matters, but without honesty, it starts to weaken. Without accountability, it starts to harden. Without communication, it starts to drift. That is the crossroads the Plath family is standing at right now. Not a dramatic TV moment built only for shock. A real emotional reckoning, the kind that forces people to decide whether they want to protect appearances or protect the relationship. And that decision may define everything that comes next. Because if apologies never come, if boundaries are ignored, if rumors keep replacing real conversations, if Lydia and Kim cannot find a way to truly hear each other again, then this may not be the moment the Plath family heals. It may be the moment they finally start breaking apart in ways that cannot easily be reversed. And that is exactly why viewers cannot look away. Because somewhere underneath the tension, the awkward laughter, the painful distance, and the emotional walls still standing between them, there is one haunting question that has not been answered yet. Can the Plath family rebuild trust before silence destroys what is left of it? Or are we watching the beginning of a collapse that no one in the family is fully ready to admit has already begun? Because one thing is clear now. The next chapter of this family will not be decided by what happened in the past. It will be decided by who is finally willing to tell the truth. Sometimes the loudest family betrayal is not the one that comes with screaming. Sometimes it is the silence. And right now, that silence may be doing more damage to the Plath family than any argument ever could. Because what is happening between Lydia and Kim no longer feels like a temporary rough patch. It feels like the kind of emotional shift that changes a family forever, the kind that starts with distance, grows through unspoken resentment, and eventually leaves people wondering whether the relationship they thought they had was already gone long before anyone said it out loud. For years, Lydia looked like the one person in this family who would hold on no matter what. She believed in peace. She believed in patience. She believed in loyalty, even when things got messy. But when someone like Lydia starts pulling back emotionally, that usually means the damage runs deeper than anyone wants to admit. And that may be exactly what Welcome to Plathville is quietly revealing right now. Because the real shock is not just that Kim and Barry's divorce changed the family. The real shock is what that divorce exposed. It exposed how fragile some of these relationships may have already been. It exposed how quickly distance can replace closeness when people stop speaking honestly. And most of all, it exposed that Lydia and Kim may no longer be living in the same emotional reality at all. That is what makes this so painful to watch. Because this is not just a mother and daughter going through an awkward season. This looks like a bond that once felt safe, slowly becoming unfamiliar. And when that happens inside a family, the fallout rarely stays contained. It spreads through siblings, through conversations, through tension no one fully explains, through rumors people pretend are harmless, through little moments that seem small on the surface until you realize they are actually symptoms of something much bigger. That is exactly the energy surrounding the Plaths right now. At first, everything almost sounds normal. There are jokes, there is teasing, there are playful comments about the future, about freedom, about life opening up in ways it never could before. Some family members even seem energized by the changes. After years of living inside a tightly controlled world, independence feels thrilling. The idea of making their own choices, building their own lives, and stepping outside the old rules almost sounds intoxicating. And honestly, that part makes sense. Freedom can feel beautiful when you have spent years under structure. But freedom also comes with a cost. Because once the structure disappears, so does the system that used to keep everyone emotionally in place. And suddenly, people are no longer protected by routine, expectations, or family roles. They are exposed. Who they are, what they want, what they resent, what they never forgave, what they are too afraid to say directly. That is when families stop performing unity and start revealing truth. And if this is the truth of the Plath family right now, it is a lot darker than the smiles suggest. Even Barry seems like a completely different person in this chapter. For years, he felt almost inseparable from the identity of the family itself, the father, the traditional center, the steady figure in a world built on rules. Now he sounds lighter, almost oddly playful. He jokes about dating. He jokes about being single. He jokes about entering a version of life that once would have sounded impossible. And yes, people laugh. But behind that laughter is a reality no one can ignore. Barry is not just joking. He is adjusting. He is rebuilding. He is learning how to exist outside the marriage that once helped define the entire emotional structure of this family. And when the center of a family starts changing that dramatically, everyone else feels it, whether they admit it or not. That is why even the light moments feel tense now. Because every joke sounds like a distraction. Every laugh sounds like a pause between deeper truths. Every playful exchange feels like the family trying, for just a moment, to act like the ground under them is not shifting. But it is shifting. Fast. And nowhere is that more obvious than in Lydia. Lydia has always seemed like someone who absorbs more than she says. That is why her emotional distance hits harder than open conflict ever would. If Lydia were yelling, people could dismiss it as a fight. If Lydia were dramatic, people could call it a phase. But when someone known for restraint starts feeling emotionally disconnected, the message is much more serious. It means the hurt got past the surface. It means the wound is not about one bad day. It means something inside the relationship changed. That is the feeling surrounding her dynamic with Kim now. There was a time when that bond looked almost unshakable. It looked built on trust, on closeness, on emotional understanding. It looked like one of the few relationships in the family that could survive almost anything. Now it feels uncertain. And that may be the most heartbreaking part of all. Because losing a relationship slowly can be worse than losing it all at once. At least a dramatic breakup gives you clarity. But emotional distance? That is a different kind of pain. That is the pain of still loving someone while quietly realizing you no longer feel safe with them in the same way. That is what makes Lydia's situation so devastating. The love may still be there, but the safety may not be. And once emotional safety is damaged inside a family, everything starts to feel unstable. Conversations become guarded. Silences become louder. Simple questions start feeling loaded. Even normal moments carry tension. That seems to be exactly where Lydia and Kim are now. Kim, meanwhile, appears to be moving through this transformation in a completely different way. Where Lydia seems to be grieving what changed, Kim seems focused on what comes next. Where Lydia seems to be emotionally processing the loss of the old family dynamic, Kim seems determined to move forward into a new identity. Freer, more independent, less defined by the role she held for years. Again, that is not inherently wrong. In many ways, it is understandable. After years of marriage, motherhood, and carrying the expectations of a highly structured household, it makes sense that Kim would want to rediscover herself. But emotional timing matters. And when one person is asking for acknowledgement while the other is focused on reinvention, the gap between them can start to feel impossible to close. That may be the invisible fracture viewers are seeing now. Lydia may need validation. Kim may believe time should be enough. Lydia may still be asking, can we talk about what this did to us? Kim may already be thinking, we need to stop living in what happened. And if those two emotional needs never meet in the middle, this relationship may keep slipping further apart. That is why this is bigger than just a tense family moment. This is a test of whether the Plaths know how to survive change without destroying trust. Because right now, trust seems to be cracking in more than one direction. The uncertainty surrounding Isaac proves that. When someone in a family admits they no longer really know where they stand with a sibling, that is not random. That is a red flag. It means communication has weakened enough for doubt to enter the relationship. It means emotional closeness is no longer automatic. It means distance has started doing what distance does best, quietly replacing connection with uncertainty. Isaac has always seemed like someone reaching for more. More independence, more experience, more life beyond the world he was raised in. That kind of drive can be powerful, but it also changes the balance inside a family where everyone is already struggling to figure out who they are in this new chapter. When one person is moving fast toward independence while others are still emotionally sorting through the fallout of the past, misunderstandings become almost inevitable. And once misunderstandings begin, they create space for something even more dangerous: gossip. That is why the warning about rumors feels so important, especially when it involves Zach. Because by the time a family member feels the need to draw a hard line around gossip, it usually means the whispers have already gone too far. This is not playful drama anymore. This is reputation. This is trust. This is emotional damage that can spread quickly if no one stops it. And the way that warning lands says everything. It is not explosive. It is controlled. Cold, almost. The kind of tone people use when they are past frustration and entering resolve. That matters. Because once someone in a family reaches that point, they are no longer asking for respect. They are demanding it. That means the family is entering a new phase. Boundaries are no longer optional. And when boundaries start replacing assumptions, it usually means people are tired of pretending the dysfunction is normal.